did you have your start in sports like growing up? And, we'll talk like where you are now, but, how did it all get started with you?
My earliest memory was playing t-ball at about 6 years old. And it was a time that I spent with my father, who had introduced me to sports. And so my very first at bat, I gave it the best swing I could, and it ended up being an in the park home run. And so I ran around the bases as fast as I could. And, there was no fence, we're so young, but everybody was cheering, and my dad was so happy, to like receive me and catch me after I hit the home plate. And I think that kind of solidified sports for me in my life with that connection to my father. Wow. And and that really stuck with me. And, I would say as time progressed and I started playing other sports, my parents divorced and separated, and we moved out of state. And so my connection to my father was a bit through sports as well.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. You're just like natural, like.
Well, I was one of those kids that I was probably the biggest kid in my class all the way up through high school. Tallest, at least. So I had that advantage.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I think I was tallest too. I'm 5'10", so I was always.
Oh, yeah, you're up there.
Yeah. Tall people unite.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
My mother's 6 feet tall. My father's 6'4", and I have 2 other brothers, and I'm probably 6'6". People say 6'7". Whatever. But my younger brother's about 6'8". My older brother's about 6'9", and they're both hefty guys. So I would always say that my family looked like a starting lineup to an NBA team.
I was gonna say.
Because families go shopping and they're kind of trailing each other, and you're just like 6 foot, 6'4", 6'6", 6'7". You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, y'all could have started a team. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that 5'10", yeah.
That's cool. So after that, your parents divorced and then you guys moved. So is that where were you born? Like, where did you grow up at?
I'm originally from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
I love that I said originally. I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota. Spent my time there until about 4th or 5th grade, and then my family. I moved with my mother and the boys. We went over to Wisconsin, and so that was a bit of culture shock because I'd been around so many ethnic people in the St. Paul area, and it was a bit more urban to then move towards Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which was 45 minutes south of Green Bay for people who are obviously following sports. And then so it was very kind of rural as well. And I had a bit of culture shock, being kind of the odd one out.
That's crazy. Wow. So moving there, how did you move into football and still keep up with sports too?
Yeah, baseball, I continued to grow into and was doing some traveling league teams. And I actually thought basketball was going to be my main sport. Just the height thing, it just naturally, moved me in that direction. But I guess I didn't love it like I ended up loving football. I had this growth spurt when I was 16 years old. I grew 3 inches over the summer. And so I went from 6'3" to 6'6", about 15 years of age. And then I tried out for the football team. And it was odd for me at first because I was 6'6", 175 pounds, maybe 6'7", pounds.
You're a rail.
I was so rail thin, and I'm out here on the football field, and I'm slipping and sliding everywhere, and I didn't have a lot of success my sophomore year. So I got in the weight room, started eating a little bit better, gained about 10, 15 pounds of muscle, and that's where everything really transformed for me. That height became my advantage, as well as the toughness that I had kind of developed over time. And so I went from being completely off the radar, almost ineffective on the football field, to being an All-American my junior year. And
wow.
Yeah, it surprised me.
You're like, I'm doing good.
I can do this,
Yeah,
and then I added 10 pounds more muscle the following year, going into my senior year, and really everything started to flourish for me. I was a first-team All-State offensive wide receiver and first-team All-State defensive back as a free safety. And wow. I won the title of Wisconsin State Football Player of the Year my senior year, and then we won a state championship as well. So that is kind of how that all propelled me into
oh my gosh,
the next levels. Yeah. It always surprises people when they hear that I played the defensive back thing, right? That I would be with people. And I love it.
That is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Jeez. So you had like dream, like end of high school.
Yeah. You know, that jock culture and, you know, throwing on Letterman's jacket and all those things. Yeah, it was a great ride. And you know, it afforded me the opportunity to get an education. You know, university, college education wasn't really on my radar. I had fell in love with sports so early, like I had said, and it just carried it through my teenage years. And so I'm fortunate that opportunity came because of sports.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. So you went to college and then NFL?
Yeah, I actually did 4 full years. I went to the University of Wisconsin. Barry Alvarez was my head coach, and I finished up his last year of coaching before he moved into the athletic director role, and couldn't have been happier with that. My mother at the time, you know, raising us boys, I wanted to stay close to the home, so it was kind of the Big Ten, but my very first visit was Wisconsin, and it just felt right. So I did that. I did my 4 years, and then my fingers were crossed to get an opportunity with the NFL, and that came on day 3. So I didn't get picked up during the actual draft, not day 1, not day 2. I was hoping end of day 2, mid to end of day 2. That didn't happen, but that following morning I got the phone call, and I was thrilled. It was a dream come true.
Oh my God.
Was emotional. I was nervous about what was to come next. It was, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. So now we're getting to the meat.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But no, like that's so awesome because going through, you know, college and then overcoming all that and getting your education, graduating, and then going to the NFL, it's so cool. So how was it for you, like once you're in there? Because I know that at this point it starts to be a transition of like where you want to be, what you want to do with your life. So how did that come about as you got in the NFL?
You know, that very first experience of flying out and being received by the team and getting a chance to tour the facilities and see that emblem, see the NFL emblem as well as the Chicago emblem, and being in the facilities and, you know, signing the contract and going through all of the physical exams. It was really surreal. It was, to me, and I don't know if anybody feels this way, you watch TV and you see something, whether it's a national monument or a landmark or something, or even a sign of Las Vegas, and then you know, the moment you get to be there and actually see it, there's some kind of shocking surrealness, as in like this actually exists.
Yeah.
and maybe it's this feeling of the dream realized, but also that something that seems so distant is possible, but you reached it and touched it and now you're in it. It's just it's hard to ground yourself for a little while, and that's the feeling that I had. So I was just really grateful. And, you know, I didn't know what the next steps were ultimately going to look like. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't think to go get mentors or call into some former, you know, University of Wisconsin Badgers who had gone pro to get some insights. I didn't have that level of awareness at the time, something that I wish I would have had.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. It was short-lived. And the reason why it was short-lived was I started to have curiosity about other aspects of my life and who I was. I had all this great experience with all these sports, and here I was being ushered into this new level. And I guess because of my commitments being so great, I thought, well, this is probably the direction that I'll always be in. Or this is the direction that I'm always headed, but wait, is there more? And so this thing started to kind of creep in on me. And, you know, as I got there and I settled in, I realized that I kind of hit a fork in the road and had to make a decision in terms of what I wanted for the rest of my life and who do I want to be for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Big questions came.
That's intense.
Especially,
I always think about it too, that there's, you know, just being around pro athletes, there's so much pressure, like just from the job, from coaching, and then also family, friends, people will kind of have this expectation. So it's like, Darrin makes the NFL, and then Sam, your cousin, and I'm just like, okay, we gotta go to the games, and you're like, I quit. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what did you do?
Yeah. Well, that's how Mom was feeling too. My mother.
Oh, yeah. So, I was gonna say.
She didn't know, but it was the call that I had to make.
Yeah.
So that it was uncomfortable. It was.
I'm sure.
You're thinking, this is the person that you did all this hard work for, and you sacrificed for, and you wanted to work hard for, because she's done equally that and so much more raising us, and to have to break that news. I wouldn't want to have that conversation again.
Yeah.
In terms of how I felt on my side. I mean, it wasn't so much, she didn't berate me or yell at me or anything along these lines. She was shocked, and the conversation didn't actually last too long. She didn't know what to kind of say about it. She was it was like a frustration, and then my tail's between my legs, and I'm like, okay, Mom, well, we'll talk again, kind of thing.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. Yeah, and then the
Yeah.
world comes to like crashing down, because you have the conversation with your agents to kind of figure out what's going on contractually, and then you come back to your mother and you have that conversation, and then you have the media outlets that want to know what's going on because they're following you, and you're not quite done with university, or you got coaches' expectations, so they need to know what's going on as well, and it becomes this landslide of change. And,
Wow.
and of course the fans and the people in the community are more or less in the dark too. So it was absolutely challenging and difficult to not only have those conversations, but realize that my truth and what I really wanted was through those difficult things, and I had no choice but to kind of do that.
Wow. Well, that's incredible that at a young age, I don't know, I'm just thinking about like me. I don't know if I could do that. If you have all these people expect so much, I'd be like, okay, I'll just stay. But for you to like stand your ground, even though it was really difficult, like that's huge. That's incredible. Like, it shows how mature you were, for real. Like, just going through that whole situation.
That's interesting. I guess I don't think about it in terms of a maturity thing, but I guess so. There is a level of at least responsibility in there, if not to myself and the things that I wanted. There's such a burden as an athlete or a high-level performer, as you've said, and you're carrying it, and you're carrying all the people, and you're carrying all the desires of people as well as your own, and you know that it took a community of people to help get you where you're at, and then you have your own stuff that you're trying to carry yourself forward with, and it's a lot. But to be able to set some of that down, if not slowly over time, is just where all the good stuff is. I've found so, and I bet you're making hard decisions all the time in your life. So don't underestimate yourself over there.
No, seriously, it's true. It's like when you step out in something and people don't understand it, it is hard. You're just like, okay, I'm just by myself. Like, I mean, it's even with us building our sports blog, it was hard at first. People were like, what are you guys doing? What's going on? You have to be at what event? We're just all over the place at first. So.
Right. Yeah. When people don't see the vision and they don't know why you're doing it and why you want it so bad, your sports site and everything that you're doing. So.
Yeah. So I get it. I totally get that. Now at that age, I don't know what I would do, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, were you gonna say?
No, go ahead, please.
So after that, there's this period where it's like, okay, well, what am I doing? That you're kind of in, right? What kept you going during that time, as far as like, who are you leaning on? Or are you like, Mom, Dad, somebody, who do I need? Just like, what was keeping you going to, stay strong as you were kind of like moving into acting, modeling, figuring that out, and going into that career? When
football had ended, that was pretty abrupt, and it's it really focuses your life. It's like a sterilizing element. You're no longer as carefree because you're not as supported by so many of the systems and the people that were put in place, whether you're receiving financial aid from the university still, or even housing stipends, things like that come with being at university. I was fortunate. I had a girl that I was dating at the time, and she was very, very supportive of me. And unfortunately, she got the short end of the stick because I was in I was in crisis. Is really didn't know who I was. Anybody that I was interacting with more or less over the past several years knew me as this athlete and maybe expected that dream to come true. And I was getting a lot of questions about what happened. So are you gonna try to do anything else? And I was committed to being done. So constantly asking questions that confronted who I was and not knowing at all where my place was in life or in culture or society. I just knew that everything that had led up to that point was no longer a possibility moving forward. So then what? And then I started thinking just very basic level stuff, survival. Where's food coming from? Where's financial aid? Can I get back into school? I'm going to finish this degree. Great. And had to really go about the hard process of trying to let the game go. So that's the initial transition period that's really challenging. And I think what I see a lot of other athletes doing who are transitioning, they might want to go back home or go back to the communities that they were in prior to university, and that can really set you up for failure as well. Not to say that I couldn't have gone back to my community perhaps and done some things, but people are going to hold you on a pedestal still, and they're going to let you get away with things, and they're not going to hold you up to standards that you were being held to as an athlete when you were part of the team, or when you had academic conflicts following you, all of these things. So I was in that abyss just trying to figure it out. And I like to call it, this period of adventure where I was really trying to discover who I was and try to, gain references, gain work experience, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting you say that, because I think a lot of times when people are in that field and they don't know who they are, it's how you can fall into trouble. A lot of times how you kind of like change, and people are like, whoa, what happened to him? Because you really, all your whole identity is like the sport. And I think that's interesting that you said, I went through a period where it's like, whoa, like that isn't me. That's like, it's like, that's what you did, but that's not you. That's your position, but not, or your job, but that wasn't like you as a person. So I think that's really interesting you say that, because I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like just doing this field, you talk to people like, oh, like, where are you from? And they just like instantly like, oh, I do this, like everyone just like lists off their title.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
See that in acting. Right. Like for sure. So it's just, you're like, okay, well, who are you? Like, what's going on? So
it's title, by the way.
Yeah, and so, I've had interesting conversations with athletes about that too, where they're just like, Shayla, geez, you're getting all deep, because I'm like, it's like, well, okay, I know what you do, but like, what do you do outside of sport? It's like, what do you like to do? Like, all that stuff. So. Right,
yeah, I mean, and I see this all the time, and you know this. There is, athletes are more or less kind of coached to give responses that are a little bit in a box.
Yeah.
And it's, hurrah for the team, and we went out there and we executed XYZ, was happy with, with this part, and then I just got to give it up for, or shout out to this part of my team for lifting me up and kind of doing all that. And they don't really have that latitude to maybe express something deeper, and maybe that's also a symptom of maybe not understanding themselves as much as they could, or seeing that there's other ways to express themselves deeper. So great for you for challenging them, and obviously that landscape will change. So
yeah, for sure. I'm like getting out of people, I'm like poking in there. I love asking random stuff, so it's fine.
Okay.
So what advice would you have for their athletes, I'm sure even now, that kind of debating? I always think about just recently, like even Kyrie Irving, like how he had to take a step back and was going for all kinds of stuff for what he believed he should do personally, which was a huge topic. But what advice would you have? It was someone was kind of like in this crossroad, or even someone that's like a veteran and they're like, oh crap, I'm injured, I can't do this anymore. It's like they're about to be out. What advice would you have for them?
Oh, I think they should acknowledge what is present and not often talked about, is that growth is expected over life, and that even in the midst of all of that commitment and energy and that narrowed focus, it doesn't mean that other branches off of that desire won't be there. So embrace that, discover, explore those things. Hopefully you've taken care of your resources enough where you have that latitude to be able to make that adjustment. And if you have time to be able to assess these things and you can still perform while really thinking about these other things, then really take the conscious effort to see what the lay of the land is. Like, where are your references? Where are some other skills that you have? I know a lot of athletes are going into broadcasting and some other great opportunities, and and investments in other areas. So it's definitely worth exploring those things before you leap out if you can. But if it becomes about either losing yourself or continuing forward down the path, jump out. Everybody knows, we hear this all the time as people share their own life stories. If you jump, the net will catch you. Just like you've done with your site. So, they can trust that.
Yeah, it's true. It's like you take that step. I feel like every time you do something uncomfortable, it's like the best thing. I mean, it's scary, but then like stuff opens up. I don't know. It's just how my life is. Like every time I take a step, it's like that.
It truly is. And that's the hard thing about your first couple steps, right? The first jumps are always the most difficult, and it's like being in the weight room or getting repetitions, or one decision a day or one moment at a time can change the shape of your life. And even though it feels icky and scary and all of those things, it's you kind of get a callus over those things and you get stronger over time. I know for myself, when I started acting, I couldn't have been more nervous. It has taken me years to kind of calcify this vulnerability of my nervous system and being in shock. I tell people, it's like I touched it and then I went and hid, and I had to like lick my wounds and to strengthen myself back up and come back to it again. Yeah, facing your fears is just incredibly difficult, but you like anything, you can't quit on it. You can't roll over. You just got to know it's there. Stay leaning on it, but never surrender to it. So.
That's good. Don't surrender to your fear. That's super good.
Yeah, because once you do, it's over.
Yeah, then you're just like, I can't do this. I'm not gonna move. I'm gonna just stay comfortable, and like, it's the best times are in the uncomfortable, like for sure. So, what are your next moves as of right now, and like, what are you currently doing now? Because I know with like acting and modeling, there's times where you are gonna have times where you don't have a job. I'm sure, good Lord, I'm probably sure during COVID, you're like, ah.
Yeah, there's a lot more free time than I've ever had.
Yeah.
My next moves are having these conversations, talking about transition. I realized there's such a void, a big space for athletes to turn around and give back to the community, to help other people, not only just transition, but, navigate these other spaces. So I'm hoping other people that talking with and working with high school athletes who are transitioning, as well as university athletes. I'm excited about a high school team that's headed to the playoffs here in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to get in front of them and motivate them and kind of for myself revisit that energy of my own state championship and impart some wisdom to them there. And yeah, as far as the COVID stuff, in that period of time, I've been doing just tons of reading, a lot of self-development. I have the book club that I'm working on. I use that as a tool that I reference for the athletes, or just men, women in general. It's a personal development and professional development book club. So it's self-help, self-improvement kind of books and titles. And continuing with the acting, you know, everything has kind of changed in the landscape. I am auditioning from home now, and that presents, you know, new skill development, and you know, everything's going digital. So it's just adapting to change and just continuing to grow.